Lyra pressed her three-fingered hand against the glass dome, watching the twin suns set over the crystalline towers of her home city. The light reflected off her pale blue skin, highlighting the dark patches that marked her as different. Unlike the smooth, uniform blue of her people, her skin bore strange mottled patterns, physical evidence of the mutation that had made her an outcast among the Neri. Final warning. Isolation period ends in 10 units. The automated voice announced from the wall panel. All citizens must return to communion. Lyra didn't move. There was no point. The communion, the nightly joining of minds where all Neri connected in a shared consciousness, was closed to her. Her neural pathways lacked the structures needed to link with others. In a society where thoughts flowed freely between individuals, she remained trapped in her own mind. "Let them enjoy their perfect unity," she muttered, turning away from the window. Her small living pod contained few personal items. The Neri saw little need for individual possessions when experiences could be shared directly through thought. But Lyra had filled her space with physical objects, strange rocks, pieces of machinery, and drawings she had made by hand. Things that helped her remember who she was when no one else wanted to. The communication screen on her wall blinked unexpectedly. Incoming messages were rare for her. "Citizen Lyra." The face of Elder Mox appeared, his features perfectly symmetrical, his expression neutral. "The Council requires your presence tomorrow at first light." "What for?" Lyra asked, not bothering to hide her suspicion. Council summons had never brought her good news. "The galactic representatives have arrived. They wish to meet all Neri, even—" He paused. "Anomalies such as yourself." The screen went dark before she could respond. Lyra's heart raced. After decades of isolation, their world had finally achieved the technology needed for faster-than-light travel, bringing them to the attention of the wider galactic community. Maybe, just maybe, there were others like her somewhere among the stars. Morning arrived with the harsh buzz of her alarm. Lyra dressed in the formal blue robes that marked her as Neri, though the others would likely prefer she didn't claim such identity. The transport pad outside her dwelling hummed to life as she stepped onto it, whisking her toward the central spire where the council gathered. The meeting hall buzzed with mental energy she could sense but not touch. Hundreds of Neri connected in rapid information exchange. They'd parted physically as she walked through, creating a bubble of emptiness around her. No one spoke. They didn't need to. She felt their disgust without requiring words. At the center of the hall stood 5 beings unlike any Lyra had seen. Tall, short, some with many limbs, others with scales or fur. The diversity of life forms stunned her. These were the representatives of the Galactic Council, visitors from worlds beyond imagination. "And this," Elder Mox said aloud for the benefit of the visitors, "is the anomaly we mentioned. A rare genetic deviation that occurs in approximately 1 per million births." One of the aliens, a tall being with iridescent scales, turned multifaceted eyes toward Lyra. Its head tilted curiously. "You cannot join the communion?" it asked, its voice translated through a small device. "No," Lyra answered simply. The alien's eyes pulsed with light. Then, to Lyra's surprise, the light patterns from all 5 visitors synchronized. Their postures shifted in perfect unison. Most unfortunate, they said, their voices becoming a harmonized chorus. All advanced civilizations evolve toward unity of thought. Individualism is primitive. Lyra's brief hope crumbled. These beings, different as they appeared, were just like her people, collective minds that valued sameness over individuality. "The anomaly may observe the proceedings," the visitors said to Elder Mox, already turning away from her. "But its isolation must be maintained. Fractured thinking can be disruptive." As the meeting continued, Lyra stood at the back of the hall, more alone than ever. She had hoped the stars might hold a place for her, but it seemed the entire galaxy shared the same prejudice. What she didn't know yet was that at the edge of explored space, there existed a species that might see her differently. a species called humans. 3 years had passed since the galactic representatives visited Neri, and Lyra's life had only grown more isolated. Her people had joined the wider galactic community, sending ships to trade and establish diplomatic ties with other worlds. But while other Neri were granted opportunities to travel, Lyra remained grounded, deemed unsuitable as a representative of their species. "The application has been denied," said the automated message on her screen. This marked the 12th rejection. Lyra had applied to every possible off-world program, from maintenance crews to research assistants. Each time, the council found reasons to refuse her. She slammed her hand against the wall, leaving a small blue smudge from her skin. The mottled patches that marked her as different had darkened with age, making her stand out even more among her people. That night, as the city fell into the rhythmic hum of communion, Lyra did something forbidden. She slipped into the information center where records of galactic communications were stored. As someone who couldn't connect to the collective, she had learned to bypass security systems that relied on shared thoughts for protection. For hours, she pored through data about different worlds and species. Most were variations of collective societies like her own. The Vril who shared a hive mind through touch, the gaseous Moln who existed as partially connected clouds, the crystalline Jaxta whose thoughts resonated through their mineral bodies. Then she found something different. "Humans," she whispered, reading the information. "Planet Earth. Technological development. Mid-level. Social structure. Individual-based." The file contained notes from various species about these humans. The descriptions weren't flattering. Unpredictable decision-making patterns. Vril observer. Dangerous emotional instability. Moln diplomatic course. Primitive mental isolation. Jaxta scientific team. What other species viewed as flaws sounded to Lyra like freedom. These humans lived their entire lives as she did. Each mind separate, each person unique. They didn't see this as a disability, but as their natural state. According to the records, Earth had only recently been contacted by the galactic community. Many advanced species considered the planet too primitive to bother with, but maintained basic diplomatic relations as a precaution due to the humans' rapid technological advancement. "That's it," Lyra whispered. "That's where I need to go." Getting to Earth wouldn't be easy. The nearest transport ship left in 3 days, but it wasn't headed toward human space. She would need to find connections, maybe travel through several systems before reaching Earth. She worked quickly, using her access to alter transport manifests. She added herself as a maintenance worker on a cargo vessel leaving for the Jaxta system. From there, she could find passage toward the edges of explored space where Earth was located. The morning of her departure, Lyra packed her few belongings into a small case. She took one last look at her living pod, the only place that had ever truly been hers, lonely as it was. The spaceport buzzed with activity as Neri moved in coordinated patterns, loading ships and checking systems with the efficiency that came from shared thought. Lyra kept her head down, hood pulled forward to hide her patched skin. She clutched her falsified credentials tightly. "Maintenance crew, final boarding," announced the automated system. Lyra stepped forward, her heart pounding. The scanner beeped as she passed her credentials over it. "Anomaly detected," it chirped. "Security alert." 2 security officers approached, their eyes pulsing with the blue light of active communion. "Citizen Lyra," one said, "your travel is not authorized." She backed away, looking desperately around the terminal. There had to be another way. "I just want to leave," she said. "I don't belong here. You all know that." "Return to your assigned dwelling," the officer said flatly. But Lyra had spent a lifetime being rejected. She would not be denied this chance. As the officers reached for her, she darted sideways, running toward the maintenance dock where smaller vessels were kept. Alarms wailed as she sprinted across the loading area. Ahead, a small transport ship sat with its hatch open, the pilot running pre-flight checks. Lyra made her decision in an instant. She leaped inside, sealing the door behind her. "What are you?" The startled pilot began, but Lyra was already at the controls. "I'm sorry," she said, activating the emergency launch sequence she had studied in the information center. "I need to find the humans." As the ship broke free from the docking clamps and shot into the sky, Lyra knew there was no going back. Earth was her last hope in a galaxy that had no place for someone like her. The small transport ship shuddered as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Lyra gripped the control panel, her blue knuckles turning almost white. The journey had taken nearly 8 months, requiring stops at 3 different space stations, and trading the stolen vessel for this outdated model with questionable navigation systems. Outside the viewscreen, blue skies replaced the darkness of space. Lyra had studied human broadcast signals during her journey, learning their main language and customs as best she could. Still, nothing prepared her for the sight of Earth's surface coming into view. Vast expanses of blue water, green lands, and sprawling gray cities without the ordered patterns of Neri architecture. Warning lights flashed on her console. The ship was losing altitude too quickly. "Emergency landing protocols engage," she muttered to herself, following the procedures she'd memorized. The ship wasn't responding properly. At this rate, she would crash. Lyra directed the failing craft toward an open area away from human structures. As the ground rushed up to meet her, she closed her eyes and braced for impact. The crash sent her tumbling inside the cabin. Metal groaned and sparked around her. When the movement stopped, Lyra pushed herself up, feeling warm liquid trickle down her forehead, deep blue blood from a cut above her eye. Smoke filled the cabin. She needed to get out. Struggling with the damaged door mechanism, Lyra finally kicked it open and stumbled onto Earth's soil. The air felt strange, thicker, warmer than her homeworld. The gravity pulled at her slender frame slightly more than she was used to. In the distance, she heard a rumbling sound growing louder. Vehicles were approaching. Humans had noticed her crash. Lyra straightened her posture, trying to look presentable despite her torn clothes and bleeding forehead. First impressions mattered. These humans were her last hope for acceptance in the galaxy. 3 vehicles with flashing lights skidded to a stop nearby. Humans emerged, pointing devices at her that she recognized from their broadcasts as weapons. They shouted words her translator couldn't process quickly enough. "Peace," she called out, raising her 3-fingered hands. "I come alone. I seek asylum." A tense standoff followed. More vehicles arrived. Humans in different uniforms established a perimeter around her ship. They spoke rapidly into communication devices. Hours passed as Lyra sat on the ground near her damaged vessel, surrounded by wary humans. Her translator gradually adjusted to their speech patterns. They were arguing about what to do with her. As the sun began to set, a new vehicle arrived. A tall human with dark skin and curly hair stepped out, wearing different clothing than the others. A simple jacket with patches on the sleeves showing symbols she didn't recognize. "Let me through," the human said with authority. "I'm Dr. Alex Reed, xenobiologist from Global Science Initiative." The security personnel parted, allowing this human to approach Lyra. Unlike the others who kept their distance, this one walked directly to her and crouched down to meet her eye level. "Hello," Alex said slowly. "Can you understand me?" Lyra's translator processed the words. "Yes, I understand Earth Standard." Alex's face changed, forming what Lyra recognized from her studies as a smile. "Remarkable. My name is Alex. What's yours?" "I am Lyra. From the Neri system." "Are you injured, Lyra?" Alex gestured to the blue blood on her forehead. "Minor damage only. My physiology repairs quickly." Alex nodded, studying her with intense interest, but without the disgust Lyra had grown accustomed to. "Why have you come to Earth? Are others following?" "No others," Lyra said, her voice growing quieter. "I came alone because I am alone. My people rejected me. I am different, defective. I cannot join their shared consciousness." Instead of backing away as she expected, Alex leaned closer, fascination evident in wide eyes. You're an individual consciousness, from a collective species. Lyra nodded slowly, waiting for the inevitable rejection. That's extraordinary, Alex breathed. Your perspective must be unique in your entire civilization. Lyra blinked in confusion. You see this as valuable, incredibly valuable. Alex replied without hesitation. Would you be willing to work with me? Share your knowledge and experiences. I have so many questions about how you perceive reality compared to your people. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt the strange sensation of being wanted precisely because of what made her different. Yes, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion building inside her. I would like that very much. As night fell on her first day on Earth, Lyra realized she had found something she never expected. Someone who chose her exactly as she was. The laboratory where Alex worked became Lyra's new home. After 3 weeks of government debriefings and medical examinations, she was granted temporary resident status under Alex's supervision. The white walls and gleaming equipment reminded her of Neri facilities, but the constant buzz of individual humans moving with purpose, sometimes bumping into each other, apologizing, laughing, was entirely different. This is your workspace, Alex said, showing her a desk near the large windows overlooking the research campus. I figured you might like the natural light. Lyra ran her 3-fingered hand over the smooth surface. My own space, not shared. Of course, Alex replied with a slight frown. Everyone needs their own space to think. This simple statement, so obvious to a human, so revolutionary to her, made Lyra pause. On Neri, private spaces were considered wasteful. Efficiency came through shared resources, shared thoughts, shared everything. Is something wrong? Alex asked, noticing her silence. No, it's just. Lyra struggled to explain. Where I come from, wanting your own things, your own space, your own thoughts. These are signs of selfishness and developmental failure. Alex leaned against the desk, looking genuinely puzzled. But how do you innovate if everyone thinks the same way? This question haunted Lyra through her first months on Earth. She and Alex established a routine. Mornings were spent with Lyra explaining Neri technology and social structures. Afternoons were for her to observe humans and ask her own questions. Today, Alex had brought her to a busy park to watch everyday human interactions. Look at them, Alex said, gesturing toward the scattered groups of humans enjoying the sunshine. No two doing exactly the same thing in the same way. Lyra observed children playing a game with a ball. When one child suggested changing the rules, arguments broke out, then negotiations, then laughter as they tried the new approach. Inefficient, she noted. But creative, Alex countered. That's how we survived as a species. We couldn't outrun predators or overpower them. We had to outsmart them with new ideas. New ideas come from broken patterns, Lyra said slowly, understanding dawning. From minds that think differently. Alex nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. What your people see as a defect, we see as innovation. Humans who think very differently. We have terms like neurodivergent or unique cognitive processing. They've created some of our greatest breakthroughs. Lyra thought about this as they walked back to the laboratory. She had always seen her inability to connect to the communion as a tragic flaw, but perhaps it was just a different way of thinking. That evening, a special visitor arrived at the laboratory. Dr. Patel, the lead scientist for Earth's first interstellar diplomatic mission, wanted to meet the alien who had crash-landed seeking asylum. We're preparing for negotiations with the Friel next month, Dr. Patel explained, but we're struggling to understand their communication protocols. They seem to change positions randomly during discussions. Lyra straightened in her chair. They're not random changes. The Vril reach consensus through touch. When negotiators move, they're physically connecting with different members of their collective to gather input. Dr. Patel looked impressed. Our team missed that completely. How did you know? Because I cannot join my people's communion. I had to learn to observe patterns others take for granted. Lyra explained. I see what connected species don't notice about themselves. Alex shot her a proud smile. This is exactly what I've been telling my superiors. Lyra's perspective is invaluable precisely because she bridges both worlds. She understands collective thinking, but experiences individual consciousness. For the first time, Lyra felt her lifetime of isolation had given her something precious, insights no one else possessed. Her defect allowed her to translate between fundamentally different ways of thinking. Would you consider joining our diplomatic team as an advisor? Dr. Patil asked. Your understanding of collective species could prevent serious misunderstandings. Lyra looked at Alex, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, she said, feeling a new sense of purpose filling her. I would be honored to help humans understand the galaxy, and perhaps help the galaxy understand humans too. Her difference, once a source of shame, now served as a bridge between worlds. The diplomatic chamber aboard the Earth space station Harmony buzzed with tension. Representatives from 7 galactic species sat around a large circular table, their postures and expressions revealing growing frustration. Lyra stood behind the human delegation, observing the deteriorating talks with growing concern. Humans speak with multiple voices, complained the Vril representative, its translucent skin pulsing with agitation. One says yes, another says no. We cannot trust minds that contradict themselves. Ambassador Jackson, the head of Earth's delegation, leaned forward. We value diversity of thought. Different perspectives strengthen our decisions. Different thoughts from the same species is inefficiency, countered the Jaxta representative, its crystalline form glinting under the lights. It suggests deception. Lyra recognized the fundamental misunderstanding occurring. Collective species couldn't comprehend how a fractured consciousness could function as a cohesive society. To them, humans appeared either broken or deliberately confusing. The conference had started 2 days ago with great hope. Earth was applying for expanded trading rights within the Galactic Alliance. But what should have been a simple approval process had devolved into accusations of human dishonesty. Ambassador, Lyra whispered, touching Jackson's sleeve, may I speak privately with you? They stepped away from the table as the other delegates consulted among themselves, the collective species synchronizing their thoughts while the human team exchanged worried glances. They think we're lying because our scientists and economists have different projections, Jackson said. How do we fix this? The problem goes deeper, Lyra explained. Collective species see contradicting voices from the same group as either mental illness or deliberate manipulation. They can't understand how you function without consensus. Jackson ran a hand through gray hair. We can't change how humans think just to make them comfortable. No, Lyra agreed, but I can help them understand it. Before Jackson could respond, a communication officer rushed into the room. Ambassador, urgent news from Earth. The Muln delegation has withdrawn from the Lunar Mining Treaty, citing irreconcilable differences in negotiation patterns. The human delegation exchanged alarmed looks. The lunar mining agreement had taken years to develop. Without it, Earth's growing energy needs would go unmet. It's spreading, Lyra said quietly. The collected species are aligning against humans because they fundamentally don't trust your thought patterns. As if confirming her words, the Vril representative stood. This conference is unproductive. We move to suspend Earth's application and review all existing agreements with humans. The other collective representatives nodded in unison. Ambassador Jackson paled. That would devastate our economy and technological development. Lyra saw the situation unraveling before her eyes. Centuries of isolation had taught her to recognize patterns others missed. The collective species weren't being malicious. They genuinely couldn't comprehend individual thought as anything but chaotic and dangerous. Let me address them, she said suddenly. Jackson hesitated. You're not officially part of our delegation. Exactly. I am neither human nor fully collective. I stand between worlds. After a moment's consideration, Jackson nodded. Lyra stepped forward, drawing the attention of the entire chamber. "Respected representatives," she began, her translator conveying her words to all species present. "I am Lyra of the Neri. Like you, I come from a collective consciousness species. But unlike you, I cannot join my people's communion." The chamber grew quiet. Even the humans stopped their side conversations. "For most of my life, I was rejected by my own kind," Lyra continued. "I thought I was broken until I came to Earth. Here, I discovered that what my people saw as a defect, humans see as normal." She moved to the center of the room, where all could see her. Humans think as individuals not because they are primitive or deceptive, but because their evolution took a different path. Their fractured thinking gave them creativity and adaptability that collective species achieved through other means. The Jaxta representative's crystals flickered. "How can decisions be trusted when they emerge from contradiction?" "The same way you trust a complex equation with multiple variables," Lyra replied. Different human perspectives combined to create solutions neither could find alone. For the first time since the conference began, the collective species showed genuine curiosity rather than suspicion. A crisis still loomed, but in that moment, Lyra had opened a tiny crack in the wall of misunderstanding. And sometimes, a crack was all you needed to let the light in. The meeting chamber remained silent after Lyra finished speaking. She stood alone in the center, her blue mottled skin shining under the lights, waiting for the collective species to process her words. This was the moment that would determine if humans would find their place in the galaxy or be forever isolated. "You claim to understand both perspectives," the Vril representative said finally. "Prove it." Lyra nodded and turned to face the human delegation. "Ambassador Jackson, may I use the neural projection device?" The ambassador looked surprised but gestured toward the technology station at the side of the room. The neural projector was a new human invention designed to display thought patterns visually. It had been brought as a demonstration of Earth's technological contributions. "What I am about to show you," Lyra said as she connected the device to her temple, "is how each of us perceives the same situation." The projector hummed to life. Above the center table, a holographic display appeared showing a swirl of colors and patterns. "This is how collective species process information," Lyra explained. "A single unified pattern, beautiful in its harmony." The display shifted, showing the same information but now fractured into multiple interconnected but distinct patterns. And this is how humans process the same information. Not in perfect unity, but in a network of individual perspectives that challenge and strengthen each other. The Jaxta representative's crystalline structure glowed brighter, indicating interest. "The patterns are complementary, not chaotic as we assumed." "Exactly," Lyra said. "Different is not defective. It is just different." She disconnected from the projector and approached the table again. "I propose a solution to our current impasse. Let me serve as translator between minds. I will help collective species understand why humans present multiple viewpoints and help humans understand when unity is expected in response." Ambassador Jackson leaned forward. "You're suggesting a new diplomatic protocol." "Yes, one that acknowledges fundamental differences in thought patterns rather than trying to force one side to adapt to the other." The Moln representative, a swirling cloud of gas contained in a transparent sphere, pulsed with light. "This one speaks wisdom. We have existed in the galaxy for millennia, yet never truly communicated with individual mind species." "The proposal has merit," agreed the Vril. "But how will this work in practice?" Lyra had prepared for this question. "For immediate concerns, I suggest we revisit the Lunar Mining Treaty." The Moln withdrew because humans presented 3 different extraction timetables. To collective minds, this appeared as confusion or dishonesty. She turned to Ambassador Jackson. "Instead of presenting competing proposals, humans could explain that these are scenario-based projections depending on different variables. The final path will adapt based on conditions encountered." Jackson nodded slowly. "That makes sense. We weren't being contradictory. We were being prepared for multiple outcomes." "Precisely," Lyra said. And to the collective species, understand that when humans analyze from multiple angles, they are not being deceptive. They are strengthening their position through diversity of thought. The tension in the room visibly decreased. For the first time, representatives from both thought patterns seemed to be genuinely listening to each other. We propose an adjustment to protocol, the Jaxta announced. Lyra of Miri will serve as thought translator in all future negotiations between collective and individual species. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Jackson stood and extended a hand toward the center of the table. On behalf of humanity, we accept this proposal and welcome this new era of understanding. One by one, representatives from the collective species made their gestures of agreement. The crisis that had threatened to isolate Earth from the galactic community was transforming into an unprecedented opportunity for new cooperation. As the formal announcements concluded, Alex approached Lyra with a broad smile. You did it. You bridged worlds that have never truly understood each other. Lyra felt a warmth spreading through her chest. I simply showed them what I learned on Earth, that sometimes our greatest strengths come from our greatest differences. For the first time in her life, Lyra was not rejected for being different. She was valued precisely because of it. 1 year after the historic diplomatic breakthrough, Lyra stood at the viewing window of Earth's new interspecies cultural center. Outside, the first permanent embassy complex for collective species gleamed in the morning sunlight. Its architecture combined elements from 7 different galactic civilizations, with the unique curved spires of Miri design prominently featured near the entrance. Quite a view, isn't it? Alex asked, joining her by the window. In the past year, their professional relationship had deepened into a close friendship unlike anything Lyra had experienced before. I never imagined seeing Neri architecture on Earth, she said quietly, or that I would be here to witness it. The past year had transformed Lyra's life completely. After her success as a mediator, offers had poured in from across the galaxy. The Jaxta wanted her as a permanent liaison. The Vril offered her a position in their diplomatic corps with special neural interfaces designed for her unique mind. Even her own people, the Neri, had sent a formal request asking her to return as a specialized diplomatic asset. Have you decided? Alex asked, knowing what weighed on Lyra's mind. The Galactic Council's offer expires tomorrow. The Council had created a new position specifically for Lyra, interspecies cognitive liaison, with diplomatic privileges throughout known space. It would make her one of the most influential non-human entities in the galaxy. I've decided, she said, turning from the window to face her friend. I'm staying on Earth. Alex's expression brightened. Really? But the council position would take me away from the place I finally belong. Lyra finished. She gestured to the building around them. This center was my idea, Alex. I want to see it succeed. The Interspecies Cultural Center represented Lyra's vision. A place where humans and collective species could learn from each other's thought patterns rather than merely tolerating their differences. It housed research facilities, cultural exhibitions, and training programs for diplomats from all species. Besides, she added with the slight tilt of her head that humans had come to recognize as her version of a smile, I received a message from the refugee transport yesterday. 3 more like me have been found. Alex's eyes widened. 3 more individual minds from collective species. Lyra nodded. A young Vril who cannot form touch links. A Muln who maintains distinct thought patterns even when joining the cloud. And a Jaxta whose crystal structure refuses to resonate with others. They're coming here. They arrive next month. They'd been told there's a place where their differences are valued, not rejected. Lyra's voice softened. I want to be here when they arrive. To show them they're not alone. Alex understood. Together, they had created something unprecedented. A program that specifically sought out individuals rejected by collective societies and offered them a home among humans. Director Reed, Liaison Lyra. A young human assistant appeared at the door. The exchange students are ready for the opening ceremony. Outside in the main hall, 30 humans and 20 aliens from various species waited. They were the first cohort of the cognitive exchange program, individuals who would study both thought patterns and return to their worlds as ambassadors of understanding. As Lyra took her position at the podium, she caught sight of her reflection in a decorative glass panel. The mottled patterns on her blue skin, once a mark of shame, now seemed beautiful to her. They were the visible sign of her uniqueness, the difference that had made all the difference. "Welcome," she began, addressing the diverse gathering. "Each of you represents the future of galactic relations. Some of you think as one, some as many, but all of you have chosen to understand perspectives beyond your own." She paused, looking across the faces before her, some with eyes, some with sensors, some with structures she still couldn't name. "I once believed I had no place in this galaxy. Today, I stand before you as proof that our greatest contributions often come from our greatest differences. Together, we will build bridges between minds that have never truly spoken to each other." As applause filled the hall, expressed through human clapping, vril light pulsing, molten density fluctuations, and various other forms of approval, Lyra felt the final pieces of her journey fall into place. She had been rejected by the galaxy until a human chose her. Now she would ensure that no one else like her ever felt unwanted again. Here, among the stars, but firmly rooted on Earth, Lyra had finally found home.